Okay, world history students, to get this lab up and going, we're going to give you a brief overview screencast of what is called the Mughal Empire or Mughal India. This is not going to be a comprehensive lecture screencast on the Mughal Empire and everything it did. It's just going to provide you with an overview so you can make more sense of the lab materials that we've provided for you on the It's Learning page. So this is going to be kind of a sketch overview. So let's start off with trying to answer this question. Who were the Mughals? Who were the Mughal Empire? Well, it's an empire that ruled most of the Indian subcontinent in various forms from the 15 to 1800s CE. So about 400 years ago, the Mughal Empire is at its peak, 400 years ago from today. The Indian subcontinent, just so we're clear on the terminology, that's the general area that would be the country of India today, but it speaks broadly of a geographic span of territory that represents most of South Central Asia today. So the Mughals were an empire. It was a political ruling body that governed most of what would be modern day India. The Mughals expanded through military conquest and were the first in that region of the world to use and apply what we would call modern weapons, ones that are based in explosive gunpowders, things like artillery and muskets. Talk more about that in a second. The Mughals also bring and implant the religion Islam to South Central Asia as well. Prior to that, the dominant religion in South Central Asia, as we know from this unit, was Hinduism. So it's under the Mughal rule of India that Islam is brought and expanded in terms of its practice to the people of South Central Asia. The Mughals also are going to develop a prosperous economy and stunning architecture, one of which you see off to the right here in this screencast, the Taj Mahal, which is one of the most spectacular architectural achievements in human history, but many others. Geographically speaking, this is the area, what you see in yellow and orange, that the Mughal Empire controlled and influenced at its peak. And like I said, their peak is around the 1600s. That's when they're at the most vast point of their rule. And like I said, it represents basically what you'd see as modern day India today, a little chunk of Pakistan and Nepal as well. So that's the geographic territory we're talking about. One of the challenges to teaching world history is giving people a sense of chronology and time, when stuff is happening, when stuff is yet to happen. So in this unit so far, we've talked about the Indus civilization. This is a civilization that goes back to India's ancient past. So that was reaching its peak, if you see off to the left of the timeline, around 2600 to 1900 BCE. That's over 4,000 years ago from today. And that terminology of BC and CE means before the Common Era for BCE or the Common Era CE. And traditionally, historically speaking, that had been known as BC and AD. So BC is before Christ or before the Christian era. And AD, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, that's Latin, for after the Christian era, after the Christian calendar is kind of initiated with Jesus of Nazareth and the Christian tradition. So that's the kind of timeline that we're working off of. The Mughal Empire, what we're going to be looking at in this lab, they're at their peak from about the 1500s to the 1800s CE. So this is well after the Indus civilization. I just want you to understand that we're kind of leapfrogging over several thousand years of history. So to talk about the Mughals is talking about something that's very far removed from the Indus civilization, even though they're roughly in the same space. And I put a couple of other notations here. You see when Christianity is first emerging as a religion in the Mediterranean world, when Islam is emerging as a religion in the Middle East. I wanted you to know that there were other political empires that dominated India, like the Gupta Empire, in between here. And then, of course, the far right of the timeline is today. So Just kind of look at that if you're bewildered on where and when the Mughal Empire exists. Just one quick close-up slide to help set you off on this lab. Why were the Mughals significant? Well, they're significant because they created a blended empire of Hindus and Muslims. Two of the world's great major religions coexisted in this Mughal empire, and that's very unique. And at some points, the Mughal empire ruled as a very tolerant political empire that could tolerate Muslims and Hindus, and at other points, there was religious violence, which is something we see in many societies throughout world history. There were grand architectural projects such as the Taj Mahal and the fort at Agra, which you see off to the right, and many, many others that blended architectural influences from both the Middle East but also South Asia. The Mughals are right at the nexus point of this. They used modern technology such as muskets and artillery. It's the Mughal Empire that's reaching their peak as these new forms of military technology are being unveiled. The Mughals are going to use armies outfitted with muskets and explosives and early forms of cannon and artillery that can batter down stone walls. They're going to use armor on elephants and many other technologies that we would consider the first glimmers of modern warfare. They also enter into trade with the Europeans. It's going to be the Mughals who are in charge in India when the Europeans first arrive. Initially, the Portuguese, but later on the Dutch, the French, and the British. And it's going to be the British that really establish a strong toehold in India. And that's going to be a topic for the coming week or two. So that's kind of an overview of the Mughal Empire. Please make sure you complete this screencast before you get into the lab for today.